It's time for another break here at the Business Growth Cafe. You ready for your 5-minute break? I am for sure. It's been one of those days, but I'm here with you and we're going to do this together. So I want to thank you for joining me here. Today we are going to talk about differentiation. How do you differentiate your brand from other brands in the marketplace? Now, I touched on this in other various conversations, and if you listen to the shows over the last 4 years, you know that we definitely have this conversation many times. But when you think about differentiation, I use a process where I challenge the leadership to tell me what they think is valuable about their company. And then what's rare? What is something that's very different that you own? Maybe something you own that you have that nobody else does, or something that maybe you own for a short period of time, but it potentially can be imitated, which is the next part of that. You can say, I've got this great piece of software, this widget, whatever it happens to be, but the reality is somebody else could come in and duplicate that or figure out a way to get around it, to launch something else in the marketplace that's very similar, and therefore diluting your brand and diluting how you differentiate yourself. So when you think about those kinds of pieces, I hear all the time, well, we got great people. That's how we differentiate ourselves. We have wonderful people. Well, at the end of the day, that's not really something you can differentiate yourself on, because frankly, I could go steal all your people, right? Your people could leave. Why are your people better than my people? All right. So you need to think about those true aspects that allows you to differentiate. Now, we can sit around and we can talk to ourselves once again, or we can go into the marketplace and have a conversation with our customers to find out what they believe differentiates us. Now, could be on price, but again, you can't differentiate on price very long, especially depending on whether you're a commodity or whether you're a luxury product or whatever it is. It's too easily to figure out pricing, right? And we can talk about different messaging and all those kinds of things, but what are those true differentiators? The other thing I hear a lot is, well, we're a 30-year-old company, we're a 40-year-old company. Well, if you do a little research, you might find out that your competitors have been around that long as well, or someplace very closely. So those become, reasons to believe or kind of messaging points, but not something that I'm going to buy your product over somebody else's because they've necessarily been in the market longer, right? That they could have a newer technology. They could be doing something a little different, have a feature set. Now, that's interesting. Maybe a feature set that might separate you. Well, how do you find out whether our feature set is a little different from their feature set? Well, part of that could be through a competitive intelligence program. I bet you don't have one of those, because most companies I talk to do not, unless they're really big, and I've helped implement some of those. But unless you're really big, you do not have a consistent competitive intelligence program going on. If you do, ping me. I want to hear about it, but I'm going to place a bet today that most of you do not. So what does that mean? How do you consistently understand what your competitors are doing? Well, there's a lot of different ways to do that. If you go to my website, for example, you can download an ebook and I'll tell you how to do it. But in the meantime, understanding what your competitive set is, what they're doing different, how they communicate, what are their messaging. Maybe you look for the gaps in their messaging to help differentiate yourself from others. Right? That might be a way to help set that tone, because you have to understand why, as a marketer, you need to understand how to differentiate, because your sales team is out there trying to figure out what are the right messages that they need to deliver, making sure that back to persistency and consistency and relevancy. If you're communicating at the top of the funnel to drive people in, to make sure they want to and generate that interest to communicate. So by the time the salespeople knock on the door, right? They're knocking on the door. They already have an idea what you're about, and they understand how to communicate. So all this stuff starts to work together. And ultimately, when you're standing in front of your prospects or your customers, and they ask you, why are you different than your competitors? That answer should come pretty quick. It should be very clear in how you differentiate yourself, because that is going to keep you growing, keep you getting those sales, and having that repeat business. Boy, well, wouldn't we all love just the renewal business to set that foundational base for our revenue to grow, that we're not out knocking on doors. It's a lot cheaper to keep a customer than it is to generate a new one. So thank you again. If you're interested in having a greater conversation about this, feel free to reach out. You can reach me on LinkedIn or certainly on my website, or go through the Business Growth Cafe anytime. Happy to talk about it. Our break is up. We'll see you tomorrow.